Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Hare Krishna. Krishna is the New Year. He's always encouraging, and He's always giving us eternal opportunity to advance in happiness. So today, we're going to talk about some ways to take full advantage of the new year, because we're really not separated from Krishna by space at all, or the spiritual world. We're only separated by consciousness. And fortunately, having come to this human platform, I like to call it a human platform because it's a place from which we can actually do something about purifying our consciousness. I was noticing some whales. There's a lot of whales moving. I was near the coast, taking some time to reflect on the last year and plan for the next one over the last few days with Akula. And we went out for some walks, because walking and talking and thinking is kind of helpful. Just to take a little time to actually unwind. It's been such a busy year. Even the last December, because I was writing the book during which is finished and at the printer finally, that I had to truncate a lot of the travels into December. So we went a few extra places in December that we don't normally go. It was very busy. Just noticing when you try to stop for a few days after moving so much, the subtle body keeps moving. Do you ever notice that? So many things that we're doing, seeing, trying to attain, and so forth. It's really important, especially around this time of year. Nirkula and I were talking about how, it's a little darker, days are shorter. It lends itself well to taking some time to, bears hibernate around this time of year, I think. I'm not suggesting that, but there is a way in which nature powers down a little bit. And it's a good time to reflect, to take some time to see, what am I actually doing? What things am I being effective? Am I doing well in my life? And also, as we'll talk about today, one of the ways to improve one's life overall is to look at what are the most important activities that I'm doing. As a friend of mine once used to say, or still says, don't major in minor things. And one of the great keys to success in life overall is to find out what are the most fundamentally important things in one's life and make sure that you're doing those every day. Make sure that those are a primary part of your life, because otherwise you can actually use 4 years, 8 years, 16 years, 24 years. It can go right past you doing frivolous things, doing things that really don't matter that much. But you'll notice that in concentrated times of one's life where one has good focus, good guidance, that one can actually make great progress in a short amount of time. And part of that is prioritizing, finding out what's really important and seeing how can I apply my energy to those things every day. So today we'll talk about these kinds of things. We're going to brainstorm a little bit and write a few things on the board so that we can. The board's not here yet, it's avyakta. But soon it'll be vyakta. So that we can get a little focused around. Does that sound okay? And how are you all doing going into the new year anyway? How would you summarize your state of consciousness? To take a few reflections. Go ahead, Priya.
Hare Krishna. So last year I was remembering what I was doing the last New Year, and I was just seeing how far and how things have changed and how time changes. And I was just thinking that just as time changes, I should also be amping up my level of execution and what I do. So I was just reflecting over the year.
Amping up. You seem pretty amped up to me. anybody who's amped up, it's you. You're just finishing college and you're still a kid. Yeah, you've been doing a lot. Been doing a lot of stuff and keeping up with your spiritual practices. That's quite amazing. But yeah, learning how to amping up, but also making sure that we have the circuitry to handle. I mean, the term amping up is interesting.
I know, for lack of a better term.
No, I know, but it's good to analyze the terminology. We all use these kinds of terminologies, but it's good to look at them and see how they apply. I mean, when you amp something up, you also have to have surge protectors for your equipment to make sure that you don't amp it up and then it just blows a fuse somewhere too, right? So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, yukta hara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapna vabodasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. That has its own natural stand, you know. But in any case, it's all right. Don't worry about it yet. As soon as we get something good, we'll put it. There's a bigger one too back there, but you don't have a stand for that? Okay. Note to the technological staff, Ramananda, maybe we should have a stand for these kinds of things. I thought we did. Didn't we use one when Radhika was here? We used it for firewood or something, right?
It's being used for the Harina.
Okay.
Actually, we have it. Since we've been very proactive for the afternoon meeting, we already took it.
Great. This is good. No problem. We're fine. We're fine. So, yeah, Krishna talks about balance also. So, being amped up, amplification, electricity, but also making sure that we're providing we're making time to be balanced in all the different parts of our life. Thank you very much. Yeah, Bali.
So most likely, 2015, when you reflect the whole process of Krishna consciousness, it's more likely you need to refine the activities, not to make more bulky or a lot of stuff. So rather than focus on very, very intrinsic values which can really enhance, instead of adding too much and expanding too much of many things on a personal sadhana and all, rather than to focus and meditate on how to refine and learn very few things, but to the details, like Advaita Acharya used to reflect Bhagavad Gita realization in case, even 7 days, in case he is not able to understand some of the things he won't eat on that day unless he gets something. So we have to really, my goal of 2016 is to reflect more on each things which is I have so much of assimilated, to go penetrate and get more into that.
I like it. Okay, let's keep track of these. Put top one is amp up, second one is refine. Yeah, just this idea Bali Mardan Prabhu just put out about making sure that we're not getting mission creep. At least I'm taking away from what you said. There's a way in which you can take on one more thing, and then you're doing so many things you can barely do any of them well. But looking and seeing, refining the things that are most important. And I mentioned that in the beginning. Don't major in minor things and find out what's most important. What are the fundamental things that we start? How many Hare Krishnas does it take to write a... Yes, foundational. Find out what's most important and focus on those things. Yes, what are your other realizations coming into the new year? Go ahead. Of course, we lost half of our audience for the...
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
For me, Prabhuji, I'm just trying to get connected back. Last year was...
and great to see you, by the way.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So, last year actually it was a phase of learning, trying to be more patient and tolerant. But by the mercy of so many devotees, I'm just getting a chance to get connected back again.
Get connected. Yeah.
With the spiritual life. So.
Yeah, and I hear from a lot of devotees how, spiritual life, spiritual practice is the process of getting, you said, reconnected. So it's constantly reconnecting. Especially in our stage of practice, we have to continually reconnect. I always bring up this point about, or I regularly bring up the point about how every time you wake up in the morning, you have to reconnect. Because the mind goes in various directions when you're sleeping, doesn't it? And you may wake up and then you have to reconsolidate everything, reconnect with what your purpose is. Because in the mode of ignorance, your mind might say, your purpose is to sleep. But then you have to remember that I have a mission, I have things to do. And you have to reconnect. Then you have to reconnect to the earth, step down. And I notice a lot of times when I'm flying for long distances, it doesn't take long to get disconnected from terra firma. And when you step out of the airplane and you can step back on the ground again, and reconnect with what your purpose is. So as there's a little too much gain on this somehow all of a sudden. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It sounds funny. Please adjust the volume. Thank you for considering my request. Reconnecting. It's a really nice concept, how to reconnect and continually reconnect. What else? Shraddha.
So my experience from last year was that I should be prepared for the unexpected, although you could plan your year in a certain way, but it could end up in a totally different way.
Prepare for unexpected.
And
yeah. Are you using big pens or tiny little pens? Is there big pens in that Sharpie box? Sure. Write big, otherwise we can't see. Go big or stay home. It's an old saying. Okay, go ahead.
And then so going forward into the new year, I was thinking that I really liked your missive where you talked about filling the gaps. And so that's the only way actually, for me especially, because every year I always see that as very little time now left to do whatever you want to do. And everybody has 24 hours, so we have to eliminate the gaps and try to fill in. So that is what the focus would be.
That's very practical, yeah. Look at the minutiae and don't overlook it. As we're talking about fundamentals, we also have to look at the small things in our lives. Another example I've used before, I used to go backpacking into the mountains with my father, and we would get ready for that, because when you leave the base camp and you go up in the mountains, there's no running down to Rite Aid because you forgot something. You have to think about it ahead of time, but you also have to not bring everything. You have to be careful how much, because you have to pack it on your own back, put it in your backpack. So he used to have this mantra that he would use as we were packing. He'd say, watch out for the ounces and the pounds will watch out for themselves. And if you look for the little places that you can be more disciplined, and where you can utilize your time better than overall. And as far as time going by, it can really be a shocking reminder. In fact, someone said to me the other day that the one thing that's inevitable we ignore, and then we go towards all the other things that are not guaranteed. What is the one thing that is absolutely guaranteed? Death. you're going to die. But everyone ignores that and looks at all the other things that aren't guaranteed in life. And no wonder I'm in anxiety. But if I actually face death, if I look at it very squarely in the eye and say, yes, this is what makes life actually productive, is this point. In fact, Steve Jobs brought this up in his commencement speech at Stanford, and he said, the best invention in life is death. Because when you have that and you're able to face it and look at it very squarely in the eye, as we do by reading the Bhagavatam and so forth, and in other circles it may be taboo to talk about death. But when we do bring it up and we do look at it carefully for ourselves and see that that's the most guaranteed aspect of our life, and then work backwards from there, our way of looking at our time may be different. We may become more productive. Yes. Radhakripa Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, I just wanted to add to the death part. I read somewhere a few days ago that death must be really sweet because after once get it right, he doesn't want to come back alive. So I don't know why that person mentioned it. He just was trying to...
Death is sweet?
This is so sweet that after you achieve it, nobody wanted to come back to the live stage.
I see.
He's just trying to, I think, joke, maybe write in a very poetic manner, but he was just highlighting the impact of death. But Maharaj, I just wanted to add 2 points. One is, I think you mentioned about in the morning when you get up, you're totally lost, you have to restart again. So I think the 2 points for me in the reflection from last year was, first is stick to the basics. It sounds very simple, and I have ignored years after years after years. As you stick to the basics, I think everything's fall in order. That's one thing which is very profound. You have been...
Name 3 basics.
Getting up in the morning, I just was like, I can still manage my every activity, but ever since I'm able to little bit do in that manner, I'm really feeling good.
So what are basics, would you say?
Just get up early.
Get up early. Name 2 other basics that are important.
Carry the books with you. You have been telling, and we have been ignoring that part. After you carry the books, you have now thinking how to distribute it, and that I ignored.
Okay, one more. These are sub-points under the basics. Don't be afraid to tear off that page and use more pages and stuff like that. Don't restrict yourself. Be effusive in your note-taking. Yeah.
Look for the opportunities. Sometimes, we just think, I cannot do these things because this is not in my zone. So always look for it, and somehow things, you learn how to do it. So just look for the opportunities.
You learn, yeah. And with another point about the basics is if you practice, you'll get better at them, and you'll get more of a taste for them. Were you going to make a point? Oh, Aditi has a point. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna.
Last year I just got introduced to this process. I'm still so new to it. Nothing I'm aware of, still I'm not aware of. What they say I'm thinking of is to prioritize my priorities for this process.
Priorities.
As in it's new to me, everything. So I think willingly prioritizing what needs to be done to get success in this process, proceeding in this process is important, which I need to learn this year at least for myself.
Yeah, that's a really nice point. Given from your perspective of just starting in Krishna consciousness, find out what are the priorities. And of course, over and over again, this point is brought up as far as priorities go, hearing and chanting. Shravanam, Kirtanam is the beginning, and you can really take shelter of this, that this mantra, keep the transcendental vibration going. Because especially if you don't live directly in an ashram like a brahmachari or brahmacharini ashram where life is very much regulated for you by the circumstances, you may have many different options. But if you keep this one principle always in your life, and that is to keep yourself close to transcendental sound vibration, that there will be your consciousness will be positively affected, and it is the foundational point from which one advances to all the higher levels in devotional service. That's guaranteed. So this very basic principle of hearing and chanting. So oftentimes the mind may go through different states of consciousness. It's explained in the Yoga Sutras, various states of consciousness the mind goes through. But we may experience at sometimes depression. Has anybody felt depression? Even a Kurnath is saying yes. What does it feel like? Come on. Just a few adjectives. Huh? Not good. Not good. Like, I'm not of any value. Anything else? Everything I've done is useless. What? No purpose of life. No purpose in life. I'm just wasting my life. I'm no good. Not looking forward to anything. Depression can strike for many different reasons. Other states of consciousness? Sleepy. You just be lazy state of consciousness. Kurnath? Sleepy. Yes, but if somebody came in here and whispered in your ear, hey, Kurnath, your wife just called, you just won the lottery. You'd wake up right away, right? I was thinking about that. What is sleepy consciousness? Because, you might sit in a Bhagavatam class and then feel sleepy and then think, you're not really sleepy. You just don't like this, do you? Because if somebody came in here and said someone just hit your car outside, you'd wake up and say, what are you talking about? I want to go see it. It's a matter of perspective. If there was something exhilarating that came to our attention suddenly, we would wake up. So we're subjected to various states of consciousness. But all of them can be gradually rectified, as we heard from the Brahma Samhita, by slow degrees, by taking in transcendental sound vibration, keeping ourselves close to the mantra, even when we don't feel like it. In the 6th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says that potent medicine, even if you don't believe in it, has its effect when you take it. Similarly, fire, even if you don't know the properties of fire, or even you might not believe in fire, it will still burn if you take it. So transcendental sound vibrations like that. And if one, in a right state of mind, for instance, when you sign your last will and tell, certain legal documents, you have to sign a certain statement that says, I am in sound body and mind. Right, Kurnath? Yes. Yeah, because somebody might be intoxicated or something. Here, sign this, Charlie. And they're like, all right. But you have to certify, and there has to be a witness that everything, he was in sound consciousness. So when we are in sound consciousness, we can organize our schedule and say, this is the right thing to do. And get it set up for when the times come when you are depressed, when you do feel lazy, when you don't feel like doing anything. Take advantage of your higher self, of that time of clarity, when you organized your life around this fundamental principle of hearing and chanting. So moving ahead. Yes?
Thank you, Maharaj. A lot of realization, but one major was that that the thing that you taught, BA page, sage by sage, I started doing last year, and on 31st I was able to complete 5th canto. So that was the biggest satisfaction. That 20 pages every day I did, and half year around I completed 5th canto. So I was thinking that how years passed by, and I was around maybe 7-8 years in the movement, but never got the chance to read complete Bhagavatam. But this was when I followed this. I could reach it, and that same thing that what you always suggest, that have schedule for all Prabhupada's books. I'm trying to add some more books in this year.
Okay, so what would you call that, Kurnath? How would you categorize that principle? Working on a schedule? Consistency is the effect. Huh? Numerical strength. Put that down. That's good too. Good, we're getting some. There's another one back there too, so don't worry about running out of paper or ink. Numerical strength. Yes, I was just, it seemed like yesterday that Nimai and Brett, of course I married them, Nimai and Brett, in a little church somewhere. Where was it in? Where was that wedding? It was in Marin County. Nimai and Brett got married. Nimai is the daughter of Manmohini. They got married maybe 20 plus years ago. I married him in a little church, and they invited all their relatives and everything like that. It was an interesting combination. There were Jehovah's Witnesses, or there were Christians, there were Hare Krishnas, there were Jews, all came together for the wedding. In any case, since that time, they had several children, and then it seemed like just yesterday that we had a kind of a party for them at the house when they were all, some of them were entering into college. One of them went to Stanford, the other San Francisco State University. The other one was going into high school. And Nirkuli just told me yesterday they're all seniors. This means 4 years went by, and I thought, wait a minute, that's impossible. But because they were in a scheduled system, they got into the school and they did their due diligence and they studied and they moved forward, and 4 years went by. 4 years went by for a lot of people, but they now have a college degree or are senior in high school and things like that. And in a similar way, we are encouraged by the acharyas to lock into a system, because 4 years are going to go by. This year is going to go by. Last year went by. But if you're locked into a system, even if it's something minimal that you can handle every day without becoming overwhelmed by it and dropping it, you will, by the force of this numerical strength, every day doing something, giving an investment in hearing and chanting, and moving ahead, calculating it, counting it, you'll get a spiritual degree. You'll become heavy with spiritual knowledge, and that's really important to help us move forward. Yes.
Maharaj, on this note, I just wanted to add, as Mukarman mentioned, associating with the senior advanced devotees and then working through the same numerical strength from their realizations also helped me last year, because I was talking to Damodar Prabhu, that I wanted to read Srimad Bhagavatam but haven't done it ever. And he said that, the best thing is to at least grab it, read one chapter, only the meanings only. And that way, it will take almost a year to finish. At least you'll get an indication. I thought, this is a lot, like 1 year. But then I thought, this is only 5 or 7 minutes, sometime 20 minutes or 15. But by your mercy and all grade, I was able to finish consistently for 340 chapters, which was there in Srimad Bhagavatam, all for every day one each. So that's the realization from a senior, the devotees gives you more strength that you can do it. Sometimes you feel maybe it is not possible. So it just, I think that strength with some blessings from the seniors, devotees helps in me to achieve that. So I just wanted to share that.
Did you get that one? I think mentors is a good word. I mentioned in another class collecting mentors. It's really important. If you can have a list of mentors in your life, it'll really help you move forward. Kandarvika.
I was just thinking that we had to make individual progress, but also we should be, at least in the next year, I want to be more sensitive to others and be truly loving and caring, because we are in a society, and exemplify that so that and be happy and make others also happy as much as we can, truly from the heart, and not like externally because we are forced to work together, so we just work together, but really love everybody, like the compassion, and imbibe those principles in our lives, at least in our family or with our dear ones, and then expand it to others. So that's one thing.
Isn't that a nice way to live? Thinking about how to do good for others. Yeah, very powerful. Different way of approaching your life and thinking about that will tend to open up new ways of relating to people. Very powerful. Okay, so I have a few points before all the time runs away. I just want to make sure that I make them. And okay, one of them is to choose discipline over distraction. Discipline over distraction. Those two words juxtaposed worked for me when I looked at them over and over again, because there are plenty of ways to get distracted. And it's not very satisfying. When I give in to distraction and let my mind simply go whatever way it wants to go, it's amazing how much time one can burn up, isn't it? But when I choose using the power of the higher self over the lower self, that this is better for me, and this is where discipline comes in. There's a higher authority. I'm accepting that somebody else knows better than me, knows better than my mind what's actually good for me, and I keep that in mind. And I choose that to do the right thing rather than just letting my mind spin off some direction, fritter away time. If I choose the discipline, then I actually feel real satisfaction and I get traction in life. So choosing discipline over distraction on a moment-to-moment basis, learning to keep that as part of my motive going forward in 2016, and always looking to what are the authorized activities which are highly recommended that actually bring progress, and trending towards those rather than allowing myself to become distracted. And it's interesting too that Krishna's name means attraction, and distraction means anything that takes me away from Krishna. So any thoughts about distraction, attraction? What is the young man's name in the orange in the back? Yeah. Ashish. Hare Krishna, Ashish. Any thoughts about distraction and discipline? Those concepts? Give him the microphone. I want to hear what Ashish has to say.
Well, I think it's really hard to focus. So like distraction are like things like your iPhone, any kind of technology that allows you to go to Facebook or anything that distracts you. And then I would say discipline is like regularly doing one thing. So like if you're doing japa in the morning, like keeping to that every morning, same time. And like, well, yeah.
That was really well put. Really well put. Thank you very much. Yeah, it seems whenever anybody mentions distraction, the technology comes up, the electronic devices. It's interesting how human beings are so adept that they can create such things, but then so inept that they can become captured by them. And that's a conundrum. If before it was television, I don't think anybody watches television anymore. But now there's other kinds of distraction, like the internet and things like that. But it's the same principle. You create something using your wits, and then afterwards you become enamored of it and become captured by it and really become lost. Anything else about discipline over distraction? Yes.
I was just thinking when he was telling about cell phone and all, to start with I was thinking to have discipline at least during the time when we are doing sadhana and not keep the cell phone with us or keep in airplane mode. Some way, by that at least we are not distracted during that time.
And this is a good way to actually to come into the habit of being disciplined, is saying, at least for now. You can make an agreement with your mind. A mind is like an unruly child, right? And with the children, sometimes you have to make a deal. Say, at least for now, while we're here, please, you'll restrain yourself, and then later we'll talk about it, letting you run free and wreck everything in sight. So the mind also, you can give it some parameters and say, at least while chanting japa, you can't do this or that. And one can get a taste. The mind can actually get a taste for discipline and say, I felt actually good not letting my mind run away and do whatever it wanted and become distracted. And one might get a taste for that kind of discipline, especially in spiritual activities, or in any activity for that matter. There's a higher mode involved, a higher mode of nature involved when one learns to discipline oneself rather than just letting the senses go. Throughout the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about happiness, which is based on this principle of discipline. And if in the beginning it may seem overbearing to one's mind that you have to discipline, but later on you actually taste something that's really sweet. But especially when we apply it to our spiritual practice, that we say, I won't become, I make a stand here, even though the mind is so powerful that I know I'm going to get distracted sooner or later, at least for this time, I don't allow it to go here and there. I stay focused. And the practice of focus is one of the most valuable disciplines. One of the most valuable disciplines one can apply to one's life, learning how to focus on one thing at a time. Other points about discipline versus distraction? Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So recently I have seen this example. I was working on something and suddenly I saw a message on WhatsApp about the new X-Men movie which has been released, and it mentioned, something inappropriate about Lord Krishna. And then, I end up reading about the director, his company, and who are the people involved in this. And, I ended up consuming like a couple of hours. So,
yeah, I can relate to that, especially when I was writing my book, because the mind wants to do anything else but write. And it can use all kinds of, well, this is for research. But it's a fact that the electronic devices, you can be going and it's like, oh, I have to answer this email to such and such, otherwise I'm going to be in big trouble if I don't tell them right now. And then when you transfer over to your email box, you see 3 new emails came back. One of them is marked urgent. You look at the urgent one and go and get absorbed in that, and 3 hours later you realize you went down a different direction. So there's a lot of opportunity for getting distracted, for going in many different directions. And I was thinking just the other morning about Krishna's statement in the Bhagavad Gita, Vyavasayatmika bhutir ekeha kurunandana bahu shaka hyanantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. So this interesting point, the mind can become unlimitedly distracted. He says, anantas. There's unlimited ways that you can become distracted. The buddhi can go every single direction all at the same time. Bahu shaka, he's unlimited, anantyahi anantas, unlimited branches that you can become distracted, directions you can become distracted. So it's incumbent on the spiritual practitioner to have this one-pointed attention. Vyavasayatmika buddhi, the kind of intelligent where you're focusing in one place. And what is it? Tasmad ekena manasa. Again, in the Bhagavatam, it said, therefore, tasmad ekena, one place, manasa. The mind must be placed one place. Tasmad ekena manasa, Bhagavan sattvatambati, shrotavya. Here's the places to focus. Shrotavya, kirtitavyascha, hearing, chanting, etc. Deya, meditation, pujas, doing your worship. Janityacha, you should do this continually, focus your mind on these things. And it's almost as if the scripture is giving us permission to do that, because the mind's demanding on going so many different directions. And the Shastra says, you're going to be okay if you do these things. If you just focus on these things, one-pointed attention, you won't be lost. You'll actually feel more satisfaction. And Krishna says the same thing in the Bhagavad Gita. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana pariyupasate. Tesham nityabdhyuktanam yogakshemam bahamyam. He said, don't worry about anything. If you just focus on me, on my service, and then I'll take care of you personally. I will personally take care of you, because isn't it the mind's excuse to go here, there, and everywhere? But I have to do this. I need something. I need some happiness in another way. But Krishna says, I'll take care of all your needs personally if you just focus. So permission is there. Permission's granted that you can focus on Krishna consciousness throughout your life, throughout your day, throughout this minute. And you're going to be okay. You're going to be better than okay. And if you don't, you'll really be in a tangled mess of various options that lead to, that actually are circular. They come back to the same point, that I'm dissatisfied. Okay, so one more point about discipline and distraction. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the distraction. You mentioned that Maya is like a sales girl. She just you open it a little crack and she puts her foot in. And I was just thinking that Bhakta Nikul started in good earnestness, because he's thinking somebody is saying bad things about Krishna. So that's how subtle the distraction comes.
Yes,
and then,
yeah, nice point.
I was very, very disturbed.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and it is subtle, as Shraddha's pointing out. The mind can make all kinds of good reasons why I have to do this now. What's that? Sanctifies, yeah. And justifies. Justification, yeah. Okay, last point, because I want to move on to a few more of the points.
In the same, like last Wednesday, you were saying that if you deliberate, determine, and then discipline, so discipline is the last thing, that if you deliberate on something and determine, okay, this is the thing I want.
If you deliberate, then you can become deliberate. And then you can become determined. And determined means that there is a limit to the places that you're looking. Because if we look in one place, Krishna will become satisfied. And if we apply discipline based on our understanding of what's the right thing to do, and I continually apply that, then I'll make really good progress. Let's see what you got. Can you read those off for us? Give her a microphone. What points did we gather so far?
Amp up, reflect, get connected, be prepared, stick to the basics, get up early, take books with you, prioritize, hearing and chanting, numerical strength, collecting mentors, doing good for others, discipline over distraction, practice of focus, and one-pointed attention.
It's all good stuff, isn't it? And determination. Okay. Okay. Another point I wanted to bring up is about investment. Because we all have some capital to invest, figuratively. What kind of things do we have to invest? Time. It's our biggest investment, isn't it? Time is our biggest investment. So where are we going to put that? Where do we put that? If we decide, if one has, for instance, if you have a little bit of money to invest, where do you put it? Where? You put it in a no-load mutual fund. A no-load index mutual fund, according to, pervading wisdom about investing and so forth, and you dollar cost average, so you make sure you don't buy too high or too low over time. When it comes to investing, there are philosophies that are well reasoned, that people have tried, they've studied it over time. They say, here's how you invest your money. So similarly, investing your time. So in a family, in an organization, and in one's personal life, where is the place to invest? Benjamin Franklin once said, if you take the coins from your pocket and you invest it in feeding yourself education, in educating yourself, then it will grow. That investment will really grow. So I like the idea of investing in people. Invest in people, starting with yourself. Invest in people, starting with yourself. It's like in our organization, ISKCON, for instance, there's a lot of places you could think about investing. For instance, in infrastructure and buildings and so forth. And all those things are important. But the most important asset we have in our organization is our people. When I look at our ISV organization, what's really notable about it? What's really important about it? It's the people we have. And a chain's only as strong as its weakest link. When we have educated devotees who are educated in the Shastra, who are mature, who know how to respond, they can take responsibility, which means they have the ability to respond to all kinds of situations without freaking out. They know how to be steady and see them how to deal with things in a Krishna conscious way. You really have some powerful asset. That asset can be transferred anywhere and be valuable. The infrastructure, the physical infrastructure around it isn't important. On the other hand, I've seen places, even in ISKCON, where there's very elaborate infrastructure and so forth, but inside, you can't find anybody. They'll make eye contact with you, or that is willing to take responsibility for anything. And the feeling there is empty, no matter what the infrastructure is. But if you even have some meager infrastructure, but you have really good people. Chanakya Pandit, I heard, although he was the main minister to the king, lived in a little hut, and he didn't keep any possessions. Brahmanas generally do that because they value something which is much more important than physical possessions, and that's their integrity. And that is the truth. And that is their discipline and all these kinds of things. These are what's really important, not living in an opulent environment. Because we really thrive when we have spiritual qualities. And collectively, when we have a family or an organization that's based on integrity and truth and good relationships, then we have something very valuable. So investment in people, starting with oneself. Let's hear a little bit about that. Investing in people. Yes, Malini.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. The last year was an year of introspection. There were so many changes that happened last year, especially in our life. And one thing that came repeatedly, the theme came up, is that change is constant. The only thing that can help us during the constant change is our steadiness in our sadhana and service. And while all of these changes were happening, we had to interact with so many people. We were interacting with so many people. And at that time, we realized that we meet many people, but we don't take time to make connections. We are giving books, we are giving sets, but one thing I felt that that is still lacking is making connections. Because last year, the year before, devotees distributed many sets of Bhagavatams because they had connections already. And this year, they exhausted their connections. And I was thinking, if we keep making new connections every every year, every month, then we can connect to so many people. We can give them sets and books. And even in personal life also, I felt that making connections was something that was missing.
Yeah, it's a really good point you're making. And please feel free to be creative. I like the stuff you're doing down here. This looks good. Use your artistic abilities too. You don't have to be too linear. And use as much paper as you like. We want artistry. Hansapriya, but let me make one point first to follow up on what you're saying. There's a very interesting author. I haven't studied his books extensively, but I've referred to them in a lot of ways because I was given a service to help in the BBT with marketing last year. And I'm just really starting in earnest this year. And sort of starting off with my own book. Because how do you market a book? And there's an author named Seth Godin who's written a lot of really successful books. And he's a really interesting thinker. And one of the things he talks about is that one of the most important assets you have in your life are your connections. And that you should spend time solidifying those connections. That everyone has a tribe. And that you should make that really, invest in that. Invest in the people in your life and the ones that you've made connections with. Because that more than anything, just looking from a clinical point of view, when it comes to marketing and things like that, cold marketing isn't practically impossible. It's very difficult. But when you have connections with all kinds of people, like take for instance, Oprah Winfrey, because she built goodwill with all kinds of people. She was perceived as an honest person, as a person who was vulnerable, who cared about people, and she had a television show that lots and lots of people watched. When she started her book club, and she would recommend a book, it was actually a problem because they would sell out so fast from all the books that the publishers they had to know way ahead of time that the book was going to go in the book club. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to keep up with orders and so forth. Just an example. But in general, the connections that we keep and the way that we take care of the people in our lives and attend to that is really vital. And in our spreading of Krishna consciousness, I know Keshava Bharati Maharaj has made it his mission in life to make very deep personal connections with devotees. Some throw a wider net. They're trying to reach like millions of people all at once in different ways. And then there are some like Keshava Bharati Maharaj, as an example, who will spend 8 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours, 5 days, just talking to one person and going really, really deeply into, seeing how he can help counsel that person. I've seen it in different places that he goes. He'll just spend unlimited time. You can listen to the lectures or the room conversations. Prabhupada spends a lot of time with people. I also notice in Radhanath Swami, wherever he goes, we may be on a schedule to get somewhere, but he'll stop and talk to somebody for an hour because he cares. And I know his philosophy was that when he started his project in Bombay, was people first. Spend time investing in the people when their hearts develop and there's strong relationships. That's what really makes things go. So this whole idea about your tribe, your networking, and things like that is very powerful.
Regarding the same connections, the last year reflection was that developing deep friendships. Very often that you're so busy in your life with your work and service and everything, we often don't take time to maintain friendships with devotees where you can share what's there in your heart. And this year, I did not spend much time last year, but this year I wanted to make that a priority to maintain deep friendships, including with myself, to go deep and see where I am. At the same time, also sharing that with someone confidential.
And it also can be at home as well. Sometimes if you have a spouse, you can as I've said before, you could spend 20 years together and never really talk. It's funny, actually, but you could actually go 25 years or 60 years and never actually have a deep conversation, a meaningful conversation. As there's so many ways in which, when you become familiar, first of all, you may just speak superficially. You may not speak deeply, and so forth. So it is important, and this is something that Rupa Goswami brings up early on in his Upandashamrita. After all, he's left us a manual where he says, here's the essence of the teachings of Bhakti Yoga. And early on in that book, he brings up these points. Guya makyati prichati. He said, you should go very deep with people. Guya means what's secretly in your heart. You have to bring that out, because bhakti is a personal process. And you actually have to become a whole person. You have to be able to connect to people very deeply and have these deep friendships in order to not get distracted into the superficiality of the material world. You have to have deep spiritual friendships and relationships. Guyam akyati prichati, sharing your heart with other people. That's a heavy thing. I mean, learning millions of shlokas may seem, nothing wrong with it. But Guya Makyati Prichati actually become to the point where you're willing to share your heart with somebody else and develop enough of a friendship where you feel safe enough to do that. I mean, who do you have in your life that you feel safe enough to actually tell them where you're really at? Who have you ever told where you're really at? Anybody? I mean, can we go through a whole lifetime and be so guarded about everything that we are and what we're doing and so forth that we barely tell anybody because the false ego wants to make a facade and say, no, this is where I'm at. And never bring it up. I won't raise my hand. I won't ask the question because then what will people think of me and so forth. We become waylaid by the false ego throughout our whole life from actually coming to that point of really revealing our heart and coming out who we are and being able to go deeply into friendships, into these deep discussions. Guya makyati prichati. Thanks for bringing that up, Molly. And now I've been greatly anticipating what Hansapriya has to say.
Actually, investment was one of the word last year that I wanted to think
Investment.
Investment.
Yeah.
And actually, I realized that investing in other self is actually investing in yourself. Because you see that how the investing with the devotees that you work with or the projects you want to work with, and actually they tap into your creativity, they tap into the need of making a difference into you, and they pull it out of you, and they make you a better person. And in the end of the day, all you want to do is be there for somebody or deeply feel connected with somebody. So investment is actually not for anyone else, but it's just for our own sake.
That's a profound realization that you have. It's like if you have students, if you have disciples, it's actually they're the ones that pull you along, that inspire you, and investing in them means that you get so much more inspiration from them. Also, there's a concept Stephen Covey gives in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Has anybody read that book? One person? 2? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? A few people have seen it. One of the principles he mentions in that excellent book is the principle of the emotional bank account. We're sentient beings. We have feelings. And those feelings are very important. Have you ever done anything that seems irrational? Based on emotion? Can I get a yes? Thank you. I just want to make sure I'm not alone in this. We really do act by emotion most of the time. We go by our heart. Maybe something seems more rational, but then I actually act according to my heart. And in our relationships, people they go with the people that they like, and the people they like are the ones that they have some, put some investment in them. So in his concept of the emotional bank account, for instance, he gives the example of spouses as one example, that if you take time to do things that are thoughtful for the people that you live around every day, and don't just take them for granted. It's like, they have to do that. That's their job. But if you actually appreciate what people do, look at more objectively. Here's another living entity that's doing something for you, that's caring for you in a certain way. If you actually appreciate it and you give back in a thoughtful way, there's an intangible there that's very valuable. It's the emotional bank account. You put an investment in that person. You go out of your way. Who can estimate how valuable some thoughtful act is that comes out of that somebody wasn't expecting, that you do something thoughtful for somebody else? How does that enrich their life, and then how does it come back to you when you do something thoughtful for other people? So really, those who are in the highest spiritual consciousness are always thinking about how to do good for others. This is the hallmark of the spiritually minded person. They're thoughtfully considering how to do good for others. That's their lifestyle all the time. So they're investing in others. Anything more about investing? Much more about investing. Okay, keep going.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. So one thing I kind of recently experienced, as I think it's yesterday or day before yesterday, that so one of the resolutions for me for like New Year was to invest more time in services, invest time in hearing the lectures, and also invest in time in hearing to the right people, who went through the shastras and stuff like that. So I was like, we were with a group of devotees, and I was like listening to the stuff. And one thing that left me with a lasting impression was, a devotee mentioned like, how about a resolution like 16 in 16? So that 16 refers to the number of rounds, and the next 16 refers to 2016. So that left me with a lasting impression. And then after everybody left, right, that was just imbibed in my mind, and I went through like a 8-round chanting stuff, and it's still like vibrating in my mind. So I think it's very important that if you invest the time in the right way with right people, then it has like lasting effects.
Yeah, very nice point. And I liked how you said you hear and chant, you listen to those who have carefully consider the scriptures, have some realization. What a powerful investment that is. What a powerful investment that is. And it will change your life. And the Shastra says it. In Lord Kapiladev's statement, he says that by this process of associating with devotees, satam prasangam mamavirya samvido bhavanti hrit karna rasayana kata tajjoshanad ashua pavargavartmani Shadaratir Bhaktir Anukramishati. He says, if you invest your time in association with satam, those who are truthful, it means that they are dedicated to the truth. And the truth is that we're eternal servants of Krishna. Satam prasangam. He said, this is great association. Satam prasangam mama virya samvido. In that association, you're going to hear. Because that's what association means. It means hearing. Satam prasangam mavirya samvido bhavanti hrit karna rasayana kata. And the effect of hearing from satam, from truthful devotees, those who are dedicated to the truth, is that the sound vibration will go in your ear, it'll repose itself in your heart, and you'll become free from the fetters of the material world. And then you'll make spiritual advancement step by step. He says, Shraddha, your faith will increase in the process. And in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, we are made of faith. That's who we are. That's why we move in the world, because we have faith in a particular thing. Shraddha. Da means where you place something, and Shrad means your heart. It means, where is your heart going? That's what's important. That's what takes you in a certain direction. And if you associate with pure devotees, whose motive in life is to advance in devotional service, and you hear what they have to say, you'll start moving in that direction also. Therefore, he says, Shraddha, Rati, Bhakti. You'll get these three stages. Anu Kramishati, say one follows after the other. You hear in the association of devotees, then you're going to get faith in the process of devotional service. If you associate with atheists, what will happen? And you hear what they have to say. You'll start thinking like that. I've heard people who have, for instance, maybe gone back to college, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, I did it myself, but I heard from one devotee who said, I went back to college, I had a Sanskrit professor who was an atheist, and said, I had to experience the dark night of the soul, he told me, because of that association, because I heard in that academic context things about Krishna consciousness which damaged my faith, and it took him some time to get back. It's just a fact that when you hear certain things from people who have particular motives, you'll pick up those particular motives and ways of thinking in their faith. Therefore, throughout the Shastra, it is recommended to associate with Mahatmas, great souls, those whose hearts are expansive and open, and whose goal is to go back home, back to Godhead. You'll assume the same qualities as them. Investment by good association. Other hands are up back there. Yes, go ahead, and then we'll migrate up to the front. There should be a microphone right there, yeah. Go ahead.
I was thinking with respect to investment, primarily as gratitude, because there are lots of people who really affected me in me being at whatever place I am today. So, but then with the flow of time, I really lost connection with many of them. So investing, I was thinking at least in this year to put in some more time to the touch back with them, put them energy. And one of the mentors who really brought me up initially, he told me was that this was a push and pull movement, that you are pushed sometimes to move forward, and then sometimes you need to pull, so that this whole movement goes together. So
pull means?
Pull. So you're pushed sometimes to move forward, and then you have to pull.
How are you pushed? Which ways?
You know, like someone helps you to, someone pushes you to move forward, and then because of the connection, and after later in time, he might not be doing as good. Then you need to pull them.
You need to pull them.
So
it's
that's
a push-pull movement. Yeah, it's like I know in business we used to say that about meetings. Say, if you're fired up, then the meeting needs you, and if you're not, you need the meeting. It's push-pull. In one way or another, you have to keep going. You have to survive. Yeah. A mutual fund. Yeah. Mutual fund.
Maharaj, investing about people reminds me of Indratumnya Swami Maharaj. So he does these big festivals in Poland. And he says, I mean, he appreciates in the end the kirtaniers and all the participants and everything. And eventually, in the last thing he always appreciates is all the people who came. And that really moves him, actually becomes very emotional. He always says, what would be this festival without all these people? And he said his favorite place is actually to sit right at the door, watching people come inside and relishing the Krishna consciousness. He said that's his favorite, to just be there. So just thought of sharing that.
Yeah, it's actually an intangible. It's something that it's hard to understand how much our investment of time, like Malini brought up, we're meeting people all the time. We go to their houses, we sell sets and things like that. And we may meet thousands, tens of thousands during a lifetime. I can't count how many people I've met and just say, hi, how are you? And shake their hands and give them a book and things like that over decades. And it's hard to know how much effect that has. One time, I mentioned this story previously about in Honolulu when I was talking to a honeymoon couple, and they turned out to be Christians, and they said, sorry, we don't like your book, and we don't want to give either because we give to our own church and so forth. But I gave them a good impression because I happened to be in a good mood that day. And I just honored them, and I appreciated that the fact that they even stopped and talked to me, and they took a few minutes, and they walked away, and a half hour later they came back to me, and they said, "We changed our minds." And I said, "That never happens." Not with people who have a religious ideology, and then on basis of that, they reject you. I said, that never happens. But I remembered the fact that I actually gave them my heart when I left them. I really reassured them that I was just honored to meet them and so forth. And I felt like that. And they came back and they actually wanted to help. They wanted to give. And you mentioned Indradumna Maharaj. And the whole campaign of Krishna consciousness really is to spread goodwill, to be ambassadors of goodwill, and that everywhere we go, we have to remember that every living entity is important. We may not even see the carryover from one life to the next, but you read in Shastra all the time about such and such in one life, and then the next life, that person becomes the benefactor. Everything counts. Everything carries over, and what we do for other living entities in this life, the investment we make in them is very, very powerful. And I know it's overwhelming doing Sankirtan because there's so much more we want to do. And we're always thinking, and this is how one becomes a Mahatma, a Maha-Atma. A little Atma is somebody who's satisfied with whatever I get from myself and my family. As long as my family's okay, everyone else can drown out there, but as far as I'm concerned. But a Mahatma suffers all the time, especially this is the expansive thinking of those in the Sankirtan movement. They're always thinking, how can I help everybody? I'm not doing enough. I can't invest in them enough. And the mind starts to expand, the heart starts to expand, and Krishna gives more capacity. I mean, we read in the Brahma Samhita this morning that Krishna empowered one living entity called Brahma to make a whole universe, because that was his burning desire. He's like, I gotta create, I gotta make a universe. And Krishna said, all right, I'll empower you. You can do it. And for those who have that burning desire to invest in others, by giving them Krishna consciousness, Krishna also gives an empowerment and allows them to expand their hearts and think of ways that they can do it. And that's real samadhi, to think like that. Paratukatuki, how to help the others. Damodar just walked in. Let's hear what he has to say. He gets 2 mics. Give him 2.
Thank you, Prabhu. I was listening to these conversations. On investment, what Hansapriya said, till 2014, I was always busy investing on gross elements. So whether it's land, capital, etc., etc. And in 2014, I made a conscious choice to invest on subtle things. So, understand more deep, get in relationships. And one of the experience which I got was, or realization was, a lot of things which are available. What it needed is how to use them in the right context. One of the things which was, which over a period of time came as a realization, I want to put that in 2016, is, say for example, when Prabhu says expansion in every town and village. It's not that we have to open ISKCON centers at every town and village. Whatever facilities are around. And Srila Prabhupada in many purports, one after the other, said that the yagna for this age is Sankirtan. So I was just thinking how every acharya has put together and things are working together. So move from gross to subtle, not only in terms of investment on capital things, it goes into consciousness, it goes into favoring, like instead of giving food, give education. So there can be, like I went through a lot of deliberation on that. So that was my motto, move from gross to subtle investment.
Yeah, I really like that, because everything comes from the subtle to the gross level. And there's an empowerment that occurs when somebody actually has integrity. If you haven't, this is a subtle thing, if you have integrity in your practice of Krishna consciousness, when you speak, it comes out in your voice, because sound carries consciousness. That's subtle. And you can't manufacture that. That comes from discipline. It comes from truth. It comes from actually being invested in your spiritual practice. And then you can actually have an effect on people. That's, Ballabha mentioned that to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This comes in the Antya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said, you are empowered. You're changing people's hearts. That's impossible practically in this world, to actually change people's hearts. But you're doing it, therefore I has empowered you. And he says, this is the real thing. And the main temple to build is the temple within one's own heart. To make that investment, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it's mentioned that this is going to be, these two are going to turn this into a little booklet after this, just so you know, some homework after this too, some of these concepts. What was the last point I was making? Yes, and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's mentioned that this purification, which happens on a very subtle level, one to make a throne within one's heart in which Krishna can be seated. And after you do that, Prabhupada said, then you can hold a festival. Then you can hold a real festival. That subtlety. Okay, one more? Shraddha.
I just wanted to extend on what Manchidhari Prabhu said, because I always used to come back home every day and tell Mukharvinda that, do you know who my biggest rival is in corporation when I'm trying to do book distribution? It's the Chennai floods.
It's the what?
the floods in Chennai.
Oh, the floods in Chennai.
Yeah, because people, when I was approaching them, they said, we have already given like $2,000, $3,000, and they were not willing to give like, even 100 to this. And I had to sit them down and explain that, why there are floods in certain areas and things like that. But it's investing in the gross versus subtle. Yeah. And he also pointed out educating them,
It's very subtle.
Them,
and actually, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, there's much about this in the Sri Bhakti Siddhanta Vaibhav, how Srila Bhaktisiddhanta would bring up about this, certain kinds of charity that people do are actually violence because they don't know what they're doing. They haven't studied the subtle nature of the world. I'm doing good for others, but actually they're doing violence to other people by giving them a false sense of security and so forth. But those who actually administer a spiritual knowledge and guidance and so forth to help people on a much higher level. Okay, Mukharvind?
One thing that Damodar Prabhu and like Malini Mataji were discussing, so as soon as we enter into our Intel, there is a big, the founders, the slogan is there, that is innovation is everything. So I always keep in mind that in our Krishna consciousness, we have to be innovative. If we want to spread this knowledge to everything, and the whole by the founder, he has this mantra, innovation is everything. I told him, why not this?
Who said?
It's the Intel founder, I think.
Intel. What's his name?
Founder. Gordon Moore. Or
Gordon what? Moore?
Or Robert Noyce, I think so.
Robert Noyce, there are three founders. So one of them wrote the innovation.
Everything. So that is
look up the word innovation.
So that is like in the front, as soon as you enter, you'll find this statement in the Intel. So I always think that in Krishna consciousness, we have to be innovative if you want to really spread the Sankirtan and find the new ways.
It's a point that Prabhupada makes in the Bhagavatam about realization and relating this to the point about innovation. And he says that realization means to be able to imbibe what the previous Acharya said, but then to represent it in an innovative way so that people can actually understand it. People in modern terms can understand it in your own language without changing the meaning at all, but adapting it to the present circumstances so that people can take it. There's a distinction between principles and details that Prabhupada makes in the Nectar of Devotion. For instance, he says that it's a principle that one should chant Hare Krishna every day, but it's a detail about how many rounds it is. One spiritual master may vary from another and present a different kinds of things. And Burijan Prabhu once asked Prabhupada, how do you know the difference between a principle and a detail? And Prabhupada said, that requires intelligence. And that means you have to be under proper guidance, and you also have to have a clear goal. You have to have the clear goal in mind of not only going back to Godhead, but also spreading the Krishna consciousness movement to as many people as possible. And in that context, one can actually get intelligence to understand what is a goal and what is a detail and what is a principle. I feel the energy is just a little distracted, so I just want to recollect the energy. Let's have a little kirtan. Everyone sit down just for a minute. Especially the kirtani. FYI, SKP just entered the room. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janabala Girivadadhari Gopi Janabala Girivadadhari Jashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Jashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Jashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivadadhari Gopi Janalaba Girivadadhari Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandanam Rajajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Go Premanande. Here's something that came up during our discussions about gratitude. And I think it's such an important principle. And it is something that can be cultivated. And I'll give you an example. This is just something I wrote in one of my blog entries in thinking about gratitude one day and how it can be cultivated. Actually, why don't you come back over and keep copious notes in your book, and then we'll transfer them over, okay? Because it's easier when you're over here. This is called practicing gratitude. My wife, Nirakula Dasi, told me about a conversation she had overheard between two people in which one person was complaining to the other about how miserable his life was and how other people were responsible for all his setbacks. After hearing this diatribe, the complainer's counterpart answered, "I'm just trying to be grateful." Somehow this answer, "I'm just trying to be grateful," stuck in my mind. This morning I decided to see what would happen if I deliberately tried to be grateful. I began looking at ordinary items in my room, the window shades, the bookcase, and my desk, considering how lucky I am to have them. They really are luxuries, but I rarely stop to appreciate them. Somebody sacrificed to design and make each one, and what to speak of the trees that gave their lives for them. Next, I regarded my collection of transcendental books. Glancing over the beautiful covers on my Srimad Bhagavatam set, I considered how much work Srila Prabhupada had put into producing and how his many followers had dropped everything to help him. What a fortune I have just in these books alone. Next, I appreciated my ability to breathe, my digestion, and my power to think. And in preparing for my japa, I considered how blessed I am to sit each morning to chant Krishna's names, a practice that instantly connects me to the unlimited spiritual world. Just with a tiny bit of consideration, I sensed how in every direction there is something to be grateful for. Krishna is the reservoir of pleasure, and everything we see emanates from him. Boredom, addiction, fault-finding, and victimhood all arise in one's mind and heart when one forgets Krishna and the miracle of everything that is within Krishna's creation. I strongly recommend this deliberate practice of gratitude. Also, the next time you're trapped in a conversation with someone who is singing a song of wheel and you might reply, "I'm just trying to be grateful." So one of the principles of spiritual life is gratitude. And that Shukadeva Goswami brings up at the very beginning of the Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit, to see the entire universe as the Lord's universal form, and that he's supplying for every living entity the necessities of life. When I was in Denver, it had just snowed, and we went to the Botanical Gardens, which is right near the temple. just like to stop in there. Tushta Krishna Prabhu has a season pass to go in there, so he takes us in. Also, when it's freezing cold, there's a tropical section you can go in and chant your jai in. But as we were walking down the snow-packed trails through the botanical garden, everything looked very beautiful, covered over by snow. And there was a couple recycle bins, and just as we were walking by, a big squirrel popped and looked at us like, "You got anything for me?" And I noticed that he had a beautiful coat on. And all the squirrels in Denver around this time of year have beautiful coats. And they didn't have to go to or Macy's or Nordstrom to get it. They simply came by Krishna's mercy, by the arrangement of the Supreme. Every living entity has some facility for something, and it's coming from above. So Shukadeva Goswami points out, see this connection, always gratitude and appreciate. Then it goes even further in the Bhagavatam to say that this, whatever kinds of adversity you experience in your life, you can be grateful for. Because we rarely ever think or take shelter of Krishna. We rarely ever think, let me rephrase that. I rarely ever think of Krishna or take shelter of him. But when there's adversity in my life, true adversity, that's when I start to pray. So I was, the other day I was walking through my house and there was a lecture of Prabhupada playing. And I heard him use the word precarious. I love words, as you know, and what they mean and what their weight is and so forth. So that word stuck in my mind. And I was thinking as I went throughout the day, precarious. The world's a precarious place. What does it actually mean? I think I didn't have time to print it out before I left, but it's on my one second. Okay, it's on my laptop. I know it's here. Please don't leave me. There it is. Okay, a few thoughts about precarious. Bringing it to the fact that one can be grateful even for the adversities in one's life. One thing is to realize that I'm in a precarious situation. What does it mean? Not securely held or in position, dangerously likely to fall or collapse. Jala Jivana Talamala. The poet Jayadev Goswami says, Govindadas says, just as a little drop on a lotus flower can roll off at any time, that's my life. But I think I'm all set. But actually, it's a precarious situation. I'm dangerously likely to fall or collapse, a precarious ladder, for instance. And also it means uncertain. So I looked, where does this come from? The origin is, of course, from Latin. And it obtained by entreaty, and it comes, the prefix in precarious, it means prayer. It means prayer. Precarious situation. So it really means that obtained by entreaty was its origin. Realizes that whatever I have, whatever situation I'm in now, it is coming from a position of being supplied. It is coming from a supreme source. And we have more on this from our wordsmith expert, language expert, Akurnath Prabhu. There should be one microphone in the front, one in the middle, and one in the back, and then it can move horizontally. Yeah.
I just thought of the expression, when an airplane, makes it into land, even though it looks like it might not be able to land. They say it came in on a wing and a prayer. Like one wing only was working, and then the rest was the prayer.
Precarious. Yeah, precarious. And so we're in a precarious situation, and that brings one to prayer. And to be grateful for the adversity in our life and see that actually it's medicinal that Krishna is giving to me. So if one can live in this gratitude, in this realm of gratitude and appreciating what's coming, rather than becoming bitter or resentful, if one doesn't resent what one's in, but accepts it and says, this is Krishna's mercy, then there's great advancement to be made in spiritual life, and one can live in that principle. Okay, and a couple of you musts for 2016. I talked about take discipline over distraction. That was good, right? Okay, then do first that which counts the most. So this is a principle. One of the books I frequently refer to, I really like, is by Brian Tracy, and it's called Eat That Frog. And I recommend this book as a handbook for avoiding procrastination and for getting traction in your life. Eat That Frog. What does he mean, eat that frog? It's for vegetarians, don't worry. A frog is a task that is ugly. You don't want to do it. There's something in your heart where you look at it and you say, I don't want to do that. It's harder than 99 of the other tasks that are on your list. And that's the one that counts the most, the one that's the hardest. But you'll do the other 99 first, starting with all the fluff and the foam, right? So his point in this book is that if you learn to be proactive and do the ones first that actually matter the most, which may be the hardest, they may be and then he says, if there's 2 frogs to swallow sitting there in front of you, swallow the biggest, ugliest one first, if you have to swallow the frog. And if you start your day in this way, if you start your week in this way and say, what are the hardest tasks, what are the most important of them all, and I do that first, then it releases all this energy, and all the other kinds of things seem really simple. And also, as far as our spiritual practice goes, concentrating on that which is the most important. Again, don't major in minor things. Find out what's majorly important. For instance, chanting japa is majorly important. Good japa is the key to success in all of one's spiritual life. It solves all one's problems. Because one can chant japa but not chant good japa, and then 20 years later say, I haven't made any advancement, and why is that? And you can look back and see, did you chant good japa? And if somebody's chanting good japa, generally they're asking different kinds of questions other than, why aren't I making any advancement? Their questions change. Okay, here's a question to ask yourself constantly. You can keep this as a mantra that helps with your time management and relates to the above points I just made. I got this from Brian Tracy. What's the best use of my time right now? Constantly ask yourself this question. What's the best use of my time right now? And if you constantly ask that and you come back to do the right thing, it keeps you on course. We mentioned invest in people, starting with yourself. Make an investment. Find out what's the best kind of invest. If you're going to invest money, you have to read about it. You have to study the science, for which I recommend the book, The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a must read. If you live in the world, which means you have money and you have to depend on it, I recommend you read this book called The Richest Man in Babylon. It's a tiny little book, but it gives the principle of how to invest and take care of the funds that you have. And if you're grihastas, you have to have those. And if you're managers, you have to know how to manage funds anyway. Richest Man in Babylon. Invest in people, starting with yourself. We talked a lot about that, and that's going to be coming out in the book written by Priya and Avantika soon, from all the notes, or booklet, something. And the next is give gifts without any expectation of return. If you're expecting something back, it's not really a gift. But think about giving. And where do I get this? From Rupa Goswami. Dadati Pratigarnati. Why does he bring this up? It's a book about how to advance in spiritual life. And at the very beginning of the book, he says, learn how to give gifts. Because by giving, you grow. And if you learn to give gifts without expecting anything in return, even subtly, as Damodar so aptly brought up, that this subtle level is so important, give. Give without expectation of return. And you'll notice the intangible grows. Your integrity grows, your happiness grows, your capacity to give grows. The more you give, the more you grow. In fact, Gopal Bhatta Prabhu, I don't know, about 10, 15 years ago, we were talking about fundraising. He told me that studies show that in organizations that do more fundraising, the more people give, the more they do give. It's not that they giving, they actually become more inclined to give, and because they realize the more they give, the more capacity they have to give. And this is one of the principles of spiritual life, is giving without any expectation of return. And when we give to Krishna, we give our energy, we give our resources, we give that insignificant that we have, our money, that everyone becomes so attached to, then we all of a sudden we feel some energy released and we feel free. We actually feel more protected when we give it to Krishna, and we give it away for a good cause, and we feel more empowered. So then we want to give more. So spiritual life really is about giving. And if we learn to give gifts and we learn to give in charity to Krishna, then we'll grow ourselves. We become bigger. Our heart becomes more capable of giving. Another is to learn to do service for service sake. May I have a Bhagavad Gita, please? Chapter 17, verse. The other day, I was reading my daily chapter, and I just happened to be on the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and I read verses 17 through 19 of the Bhagavad Gita, and you know, I've read it many times, same words, but when I heard it, it just struck me in such a powerful way that I couldn't help but sharing this with you. 3:17. But for one who takes pleasure in the self, whose human life is one of self-realization, and who is satisfied in the self only, fully satiated, for him there is no duty. A self-realized man has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason not to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on any other living being. Without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. You can live off those 3 verses for the rest of your life and be a completely happy human person, human being, by following these basic principles, which is that we don't really need anything else if we have self-realization, and we do our duty simply to satisfy Krishna. Then we'll be happy. We'll be happy and satisfied. So look at Bhagavad Gita 3:17 through 19. The next thing that is a vital process for advancing in spiritual life is to set up a drip system. There's a lot written about drip systems that you can find, for instance, on the internet. Here's one that was put out by, I think, Depot or something like that. Look at this. It's like 10 pages of how to set up a drip system at home for your garden. A lot of pictures and arrows and everything like that. But there's a way in which you can set up a spiritual drip system for yourself. So a little bit about the drip system garden. A drip irrigation system lets you make the most of your water to maintain the plants around your home. About the drip irrigation system. Look at that. It's a little tube with a drop coming out of it. Plant. It's a welcome sight during a drought, right? Talks about drip irrigation is a lower pressure, low volume watering system that delivers water to home landscapes in a variety of methods, including dripping, spraying, and streams. Again, another picture. So the idea is that you invest some time to set up these tubes that go to your garden, and they go underground. There's a central watering source, and then when you turn it on, each one of these little valves, according to whether it's spraying or dripping, delivers the right amount of water to each plant. And even if you go away for 6 weeks and you turn on your drip system, when you come back, your plants will be perfectly happy because they're getting what they need because you took the time to set it up. So in a similar way, everyone needs to have a spiritual drip system in their life. And just imagine what happens if you don't water your plants. What happens? It's sad, isn't it? Perfectly beautiful, nice living entity plant, and then you don't water it, and you come back and it's just dead and dry and all withered up. It's really sad. But if you set it up so that it gets what it needs, that the plant will be happy and a source of joy in your life. In the same way, if you set up a system so that you regularly get the spiritual water that you need, the Shravanadi Jal, hearing and chanting, then you'll be happy. And here's a section from, first of all, we talked about schedule. So part of the drip system is schedule for the things that you do in your life. Someone might say, well, that's not spiritual. Spiritual means to just, it means to feel and do as you wish in life. And if I feel like chanting, I'm chanting in my mind. And if I feel like I'll do more and I'll do... Some people say this, they think this, but actually, and it may seem counterintuitive to some people, but our acharyas, Sankhya Purvaka Namagana Natibi. No, you're counting it all. You're writing it down. It's clear. You're pulling down beads and you're saying, this many I did, and I finished my vow. I didn't say, oh, it doesn't matter. It matters. So you have to schedule. What does schedule mean? A plan for carrying out a process or procedure, giving lists of intended events and times. A plan for process or procedure, giving lists of intended events or times. One's day-to-day plans or timetable. So in terms of the drip system, there's a little box where you set the dials so every part of the garden gets the right amount of water on schedule. So it's all programmed in, right? So you have to have that for your spiritual life also. And, you know, the origin of this schedule, it means a scroll, an explanatory note from schedula, Latin, slip of paper. In other words, you got to write it down. It's got to be clear. It can't just, oh, it's in my head. I don't have counter beads because, you know, I just keep it in my head. No. You gotta write things down. That's why we made that little chart called Be a Sage Page by Page. Because if you don't have an idea of, and it's clearly in your head, when you're going to finish the Bhagavatam, seriously reading the Bhagavatam. And you won't finish it in 5 years because you don't have a schedule. And what is a schedule? It's a slip of paper that you wrote something on and you said, this is how many pages I'm going to read every day to finish the Bhagavatam by this exact date in 5 years. And if you don't have that, then you're not on the drip system. So you got to get on a drip system. Do you want proof of why you have to be on the drip system? You don't want any proof? You don't demand proof? Please demand proof. Yes. We demand proof. We demand proof. But say it more emphatically. We demand proof. So the people in the kitchen start getting alarmed. Say, we demand proof. Okay. You should say that regularly. Here from the Madhya Lila of the Chaitanya Charitamrita 25.279. It'll magically appear on the screen within 25 seconds or less, or your money back from this class today. Jai Lila Amrita Vine, Kaya Jari Anapane, Tabi Bhaktera Dulab Jivana. Jar Ek Bindu Pane, Utpalita Pane, Hase Gai Kare Nartana. So here's the word for word. Again, 25,279, 5 seconds left. Synonyms, J, he who, Leela, of the pastimes of Lord Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Prita, Vinay, without nectar. Kai Jati Anapane, if one eats only ordinary food grains. Tabe, then, Bhaktera, of the Bhaktas, Durlabha Jivana, he becomes weakened. Jar, of which, Ek Bindu Pane, if one drinks, everyone say, Ek Bindu Pane. Don't look at the screen until it's up there, it's too distracting. Ek Bindu Pane. If one drinks one drop. Ek Bindu Pane. Drinks one drop. Ek Bindu Pane. If one drinks one drop. Utpalita Tanumane. The body and mind become jubilant. Hase. Laughs. Gaya. Chants. Kare Nartana. Dances. Okay, translation. Men become strong. Is that the right one? 279. Maybe I have the wrong one. 2579? Try the one before it. Sometimes one before it. 270. There you go. Sorry. Men become strong and stout by eating sufficient grains, but the devotee who simply eats ordinary grains, but does not taste the transcendental pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Krishna, gradually becomes weak and falls down from the transcendental position. However, if one drinks but a drop of the nectar of Krishna's pastimes, his body and mind begin to bloom and he begins to laugh, sing, and dance. Question, how much does it take for your body and mind to bloom and for you to begin laughing, singing, and dancing? How much does it take? Say it in Bengali, please. That's all you need. And Prabhupada writes in his purport, all the devotees connected with the Krishna consciousness movement, raise your hand if this applies to you. All the devotees good, okay. All the devotees connected with the Krishna consciousness movement must read all the books that have been translated, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and others. Otherwise, after some time, they will simply eat, sleep, and fall down from their position. Thus, they will miss the opportunity to attain the eternal blissful life of transcendental pleasure. Prabhupada equates this schedule with reading all the books. Why not incorporate that into your drip system? Why not make a schedule that you know between now and whenever the actuary tables from the insurance company say that you're going to drop this body off somewhere on a corner or in the bathtub or wherever you happen to be. You drop it behind and leave on. Before you have to drop it off or before you lose your ability to read and do these kinds of things, which is altogether possible. I've seen it happen. Why not have a schedule to finish all of the books at least once, twice, or 50 times? Why not have a schedule? That's the drip system. You have to write it down. You have to figure it out and put it on a piece of paper. Otherwise, it's not a schedule. And you have to know, if someone wakes you up at 1:30 in the morning and grabs you by the arm and said, when are you going to finish the Bhagavatam? What date? You're going to say what? 2017 on March 31st. You'll be able to say that because you're on a schedule, right? You should be on a schedule for all your spiritual practices. Sankhya Purvaka Nama Gana Nati Bi. That's what makes you strong. And people come and say, I feel good in spiritual life. You don't have a schedule. If you're not getting water, if the plant doesn't get water, does it dry up and die? Yeah, of course. And that's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says over and over again. He said, even after you have, while walking in this world, grown your coverings of the universe, through the Viraja river, to the spiritual planet of Goloka, entwined itself on Krishna's lotus feet, he says, you still have to be on a schedule because this material world is precarious and you have to constantly be on that schedule. Now, everyone has their own capacity. It doesn't mean you have to do what the Swamis did. It doesn't mean you have to be like Dhruva Maharaj, but you have to follow in their footsteps. If you can only read 1 page a day, that's enough. How much is enough? Say it in Bengali. Ek pinupane. You need 1 drop to be alive, and it's a fact. You can experience it yourself. If you just pick up the Gita every day and read it, you will have superior strength and knowledge in Krishna consciousness. You won't become bewildered. You won't become depressed. And if you are depressed, when you read it, and you read that verse from chapter 3, 17 through 19, suddenly you'll think, my duty is just to serve Krishna, not be attached to the fruits of results. Everyone else is telling you, you have to be attached to this and that, and then you become depressed because you can't keep it. And you brought up this point, the world's always changing, right? It's always changing. Isn't that a bummer? It's a complete bummer. I mean, it's all changing right before our eyes, just when we thought we were comfortable, just when we thought we had the right relationship and everything was set, it just goes and moves on you. Well, Krishna says, expect that, but be satisfied in the self. Be satisfied with your hearing and chanting. Don't become bewildered by these things. You have to have a drip system. And for those who have a drip system, Krishna, Shukadev Goswami says in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.3.17, which you'll see on your screen, 25 seconds or less, 2.3.17, otherwise your money back. Oh my God, if I have this much money to give back. Okay, the verse is, please repeat after me, Ayur harati vai pungsam. Udyanastam chayan asau tasyarte yachanonita uttama shloka. Translation, both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. So remember that life is precarious and that you pray. That's where the word precarious comes from. It means you're in a tough situation, so keep the prayers coming. Don't stop and think, I'm good now, because you're not. That's illusion, that's Maya. Keep praying. And finally, you got to be happy. And in order to be happy, you got to have a happiness plan, according to Jim Rohn. Got to have a happiness plan. Who here has a happiness plan? Has literally sat down and written out a happiness plan for their life? Great. Well, this will be okay. One person. No wonder. That explains a lot about Mukar. He actually has a happiness plan. So. And yeah, one of the fun of the human mind is to plan things out. Don't be afraid of planning. If you want to get somewhere, plan it out. And if you plan it out well, and you execute your plan step by step, you're very likely to get there. If you don't have a plan, don't come crying to me. If you don't have a plan, it's very likely that it'll remain on a very subtle level and you'll never get it and you'll feel frustrated. Make a plan. If you want to get something, make a plan for it. If you want to, in any practical situation in life, just like if you, financially speaking, most people don't have plans for anything in their financial lives. Therefore, there's so many people that end up working the rest of their life. There is no retirement in America, actually, because, and I'm not going to go into it. It's the cruelty of the system, actually. It's a broken system. But there's so many things in life that we would like to attain, but you need a plan to attain them. One of them is happiness. Why not have a happiness plan? Here's a few ideas for your happiness plan. Happiness is pure consciousness. That's what happiness is. First, you have it is. What is happiness? It's pure consciousness. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhakti radhoksajay ahaitukya pratiyata yatma suprasidati. Bhagavatam gives us a clear definition. When you have unmotivated, uninterrupted service to Krishna, which means pure consciousness, then you'll feel happiness. So aspire for that. The other point in your happiness plan is to adjust your aspiration. It's good to have aspiration. Not we give up aspiration and say, I'm a dead stone. But you should have lots of aspiration. You should jump out of bed in the morning with aspiration. But for what? For service. For service. Service to Krishna. The world is for service or for sense gratification. That's your two choices. If you choose a life that is service without motivation, then you'll have unlimited opportunity in your life for growth and for being engaged constantly. And if you choose to aspire for sense gratification, you'll have limited opportunities. In fact, you'll have no opportunities because the minute you start thinking about it, you'll get morose. The minute you start thinking about having to satisfy your own senses, that's when you feel unhappy. And then when you start trying for it, then you become like a poor donkey, carrying around big loads of stuff, getting beaten by its master all the time, and being the butt of jokes. So that's the choices. A, service, pure service to Krishna. B, being beaten like a donkey and ridiculed by everybody in the universe. So let's vote. A or B? A, pure service to Krishna with no motivation in your heart whatsoever. You'll be welcome wherever you go. Those who are pure servants, who just want to serve, they don't even want to be recognized for their service. Aren't they the ones everyone wants to have around? Yes. Everywhere in the world, people are calling you up and say, can you come over here for a little while, for 5 minutes even? Those are the people want. And the people who have a big fat false ego, who always have to be in the center of everything, always have to take credit for everything, and whose agenda in life is to get as much sense gratification as they want. People don't even want them in the room. Unless they're just like they are, because the Bhagavatam says, Swavid varahoshcha karai samstata purushapusu nayat karnapato peto jatu nama gadagraja. That those people who are like hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, praise those men who never listen to the transcendental topics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who delivers one from this sinful life in the material world. Some things like that come up around this time of year for like politicians and stuff like that. Then the other principle for your happiness plan is take time to actually cultivate it and be grateful for what you have now. 3 things you're grateful for. I'm grateful for you. Being here right now. Okay, what else? Go ahead, yes. What? That you're in service of Krishna, yeah. You're carrying over from your last life. Krishna gave you more facility because you're so grateful. And? You're grateful for? For the human life. That's a big deal. What a robot we have. I mean, this is the best robot. Everyone's thinking, I got to have that car. I can have the ultimate driving machine. You already have it. This is the machine. You've got the best of the best. Even if you didn't have legs or arms in it, you'd still have the most amazing robot in the universe. Labvam sudurlabam idam bahusambhavante. Be grateful for it. What else? You said something, Avantika. Association. Any association you're particularly grateful for? You don't have to say it out loud, but particular people in your life you might be grateful for. Take a minute to appreciate them in your mind. And when you get going, it grows in your life. What else? The books. I mean, what a miracle it is to have the books we have. And Prabhupada says, sometimes sadhus who live right next to the Ganges, they go somewhere else to take a bath. Because they lose their gratitude. You got to keep your appreciate what you've got. It's keep the simple thing, like chanting Hare Krishna. Look at what we've got. It's the best thing. There's nothing better in the three worlds. But then I think, I'll do something else. I'll chant some other mantra. I'll do some other process that's more complicated. But Chaitanya, simple thing. But if you have gratitude for chanting Hare Krishna, you'll sit down and chant it and feel like, I'm so grateful that I have this. And then you'll actually be able to enter into the chanting of the holy name because you have gratitude. What else? Mentors? You're grateful for your mentors. Yeah, I mean, where would we be without mentors? And they are Krishna's representatives. Even the Vartmana Pradakshika Guru. My Vartmana Pradakshika Guru is Richie Corsa, one of my high school friends. He brought me a Back to Godhead magazine. I don't know why he brought it to me. He's not into it. But he brought it to me and gave it to me and started me. I'm so grateful to him that he started me. And if you go down the list and think of all your mentors, the Chaitanya Charitamrita says, they are all incarnations of Krishna. They're all manifestations of Krishna in this world. Be grateful for them, the people who are helping you. What else?
I was thinking this will come from Mukharvinda because he shows more gratitude for this than I do, and that's prasadam.
Prasadam. I couldn't be more... I mean, Krishna comes as delicious food stuff. I mean, how could you be great more... How could we be more blessed than Krishna comes as delicious food stuff? I mean, in some processes, they have to eat, what's that diet called? It's there's some like really dry Buddhist diet that a lot of people were on before they came. Kurnath would remember, but he stepped out. What else? SKP's grateful. Look at that smile. Grateful to be in the Bay Area. I mean, this is the premier preaching place in the world. For that matter, just as far as material existence goes, guarantee it doesn't get any better than this. And everyone's thinking, I got to have something better. This is it. This is all you get at this time in this period of history on this planet. This is as good as it gets. The clothes you have, the car you have, the kind of the temperature control you have in your house, everything you have, that's as good as it gets, materially speaking. Yeah, I mean, there's so many other places on the planet where it's too dry, or it's too, it's too wet, or it's too loud, or it's too dusty, or whatever it is. But this is it.
We have so many temples here, Prabhu, but still we find people to give a Bhagavatam. Like in Alabama, if you go to other parts of US, it's very difficult. The people say they don't even open the door.
Yeah.
But we are very grateful because of all our chanting.
We can be really grateful for that. And then if you go to those other places, you can be grateful for the opportunity to experience that drought too. And then you'll be even more grateful for the people in between all those people who actually take it, right? So every opportunity. Harika? She's grateful to Srila Prabhupada. You think about what sacrifice did Prabhupada make to bring everything to us. Okay, so gratitude is a part of your happiness plan. And just remember that life is precarious. You have to live in the moment. Don't take every day as a compartmentalized period of time. Don't worry so much about the future or the past, but take today. Be grateful for the fact that you have another shot at it today. I heard Steve Jobs in his really excellent commencement speech at Stanford say the same. He talked about different periods in his life, and he said one of the most profound times in his life when he found out he had cancer. And he went into the doctor and he said, it's pancreatic cancer. And the doctor said to him, better get your affairs in order, which means you're going to die. He said 3 to 6 months. My sister had pancreatic cancer. When did she find out she had it? She became full professor at Bellingham University. She was a professor of geology. She became full professor. And then just a while afterwards, she put in for her full retirement with full pension. The day she got her paperwork and everything for her retirement and her full pension started was the exact day that she got the notice that she had 3 months to live. She called me up on the phone. I said, how are you? And she goes, well, I've been better. I said, what's going on? She said, I found out I have pancreatic cancer, I have 3 months to live. I said, well, how are you doing? She said, well, I had thought that I would probably, live into my 80s, appreciate my granddaughter and everything like that, but I don't, so I have 3 months. And this is the precarious situation of the world. Appreciate what you have now. So Steve Jobs said when he got that notice, then he had a different perspective on his life. That evening, he had a biopsy done where they put a tube down through the stomach into the pancreas. They take some cells out. And he said, incapacitated at the time, but others who were in the room said that they watched, and as the doctor got the results from the biopsy, looking at the cells, he began to cry because he realized that it was a very rare kind of pancreatic cancer that could be removed by surgery. Most can't. And then they told him, okay, we can do the surgery. But he said within that period of time from the morning to the evening, he had a completely different look at life. One thing that he said to the audience was, at Stanford, to appreciate the life that you have, because it can go away at any time. And he also said he realized in that time when he faced death very directly that nobody likes to die. He said even those who know that they're or have this strong faith that they're going to die and go to heaven, even they don't want to die to go there. One may philosophize and say it's no big deal, I'm Krishna conscious, I'll be able to handle it. It's a very difficult thing to handle. But it does, as he said at the end of the day, give you this perspective of how precarious life is and to appreciate every moment that you have. So then he finished by saying that he once heard a philosopher say that treat every day as if it was your last, because one day you'll be right. And if you look at yourself in the mirror and how would I conduct myself if this is my last day? Then it helps to bring that perspective for gratitude and the focus on what's really important in life. So we have this new opportunity, it's a new year, and if we set up our drip systems so that we know we're getting the spiritual water we need to thrive, and we also cultivate gratitude and the other aspects of the happiness plan that I mentioned, then we can have an outstanding 2016, Krishna willing. Yes, SKP?
Krishna Prabhu, regarding the gratitude you mentioned, we recently, we gave so many Bhagavatam sets in particular area in Cupertino. We thought, something we can do, as show the gratitude. So myself, Ram Sundar Prabhu, we went, after the Sankirtan, we went some houses and gave them prasadam. He's really happy, Prabhu. He said, who can say no to Bhagavatam? And you coming in the night and giving us prasadam. And he told the entire area, if you go this place, you can do book distribution more. And I'm feeling this is the way we can connect back to them and give them prasadam and ask them to come to temple.
Give and give and give and give and give. And the more we give, following the footsteps of the Panchatattva, whose main prerogative in life was to give out Krishna consciousness, as it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the more it grew, the storehouse grew. And this is our preoccupation, organizing ourselves to give out the most valuable thing to as many people as possible. And from that, the great miracles come about. That was the great miracle of this Krishna consciousness movement that we can be grateful for, that we're living within, that Srila Prabhupada came to give. And I like what Dr. Prabhu said, because on the gross level, he had no assets. But on the subtle level, he had everything to give. And when we give that, then it grows in miraculous ways. And if we give in an open-hearted way with no motivation, simply to serve Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, taking any kind of credit, then we'll have a completely happy life, as per the verses I read to you from the Bhagavad Gita, from the 3rd chapter, which saved my life. Go Premanande Haribo! So now we're going to have the opportunity to worship Srila Prabhupada through song and prayer, because we're in a precarious situation. So we're going to pray hard, and we're going to sing this song, and we'll have gratitude for the song itself, because we'll remember what it means actually, and not just do it as a ritual. Vancha kalpaduruvischa kripasnabhyevacha pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha gopremanande haribol. We could put up these